Hey guys, so this is a re-record of something that I filmed while I was taking a walk. Um, Audio turned out okay, but for most of it, you're looking at an extreme close-up of my chin, so I'm just gonna have to redo it in here. Today I want to talk about this strange brand of pseudo-fascist conservative who can't seem to enjoy anything, even things that are supposed to be fun and lighthearted, and who doesn't want you to enjoy it either. I'm talking about the crybabies online who are endlessly whining about wokeness. Like there is a woke mind virus. It's the obsession that fragile white dudes have with wokeness, something they can't even define. But moving on. The reason I'm talking about this is because these people spoil perfectly good media by going on review sites and endlessly complaining and doing stupid review bombs and launching a million bad faith criticisms of a project, which scares a bunch of Hollywood executives who are so terrified of losing even a fraction of 1% of their expected revenue that they are willing to cater to wanna Nazis and sometimes actual Nazis. So a good example of this is The Acolyte, which is a Star Wars show. Now, I haven't really been into Star Wars lately. I find a lot of the things that are coming out these days are kind of derivative and predictable. But The Acolyte interested me because I saw the first 5 minutes almost by accident, and it had Carrie-Anne Moss, who I love from The Matrix, and those first 5 minutes are a big kung fu fight. It's like a Jedi kung fu fight, and I love kung fu stories. Like if you haven't read my books, that features quite heavily. So I thought, okay, this is going to be kind of cool. This is going to be interesting. Less lightsabers, more hand to hand. Let's do like the Jedi Kung Fu show. Okay, and there was a mystery about a young woman with force powers who killed a Jedi, and they were trying to track her down, and it seems she had no memory of it, and it turns out it was her evil twin. Yes, really, but no, it's not as cliche as I'm making it sound. But the point is that they did this season, had some great acting in it, had some interesting fight choreography, had a reasonably decent story that kind of challenged some of the political assumptions about how the Jedi and the Sith worked, and whether who the good guys are. We kind of get to see the ugly side of the Jedi and maybe the benign side of the Sith, and that's interesting. So they did all that. And I thought, is it a masterpiece? No, but it was a decently entertaining show. I was eager to see the second season. But then they canceled it. And they canceled it because a bunch of crybabies went online and review bombed it because the main character happens to be a young black woman in her 20s. Just like they did to Obi-Wan for also featuring a black woman. And they complained about the bad writing, and they complained about the forced diversity. And because these stupid executives, at the big Hollywood companies, in this case Disney, but really all of them, because they're such cowards, they actually said, you know what, we're going to put some of you people in our focus groups, and we're going to ask fans for more input. And it's like, oh God, no, because these people, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have thought the idea of including fans more in the creative process was a great idea. And I still do to an extent. But the key to understand here is that these people are not fans. They're anti-fans. they go into these shows, they go into these projects looking for something to hate. And when you look for something to find fault with, when you look for a reason to hate something, you inevitably find one. And these guys, they rant endlessly about how, this isn't real Star Wars, or how Kathleen Kennedy doesn't get Star Wars, or some nonsense along those lines. And they do it to every single other project too. They do it to, they do it to Star Trek Discovery. They did it to Captain Marvel. They compare the latest project in a franchise to some idealized version of what that franchise is supposed to stand for. They have this idea of what pure Star Wars looks like in their heads, and anything that deviates from that is, a failure in their books. And they say endlessly, these people, they don't get Star Wars. And the key here is there's nothing to get. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that a new work in an established franchise can't deviate from the themes of that franchise. That happens sometimes. And I'm not saying that you can't dislike something for having that deviation. Spoiler alert, I am not a big fan of Star Trek Picard. Why? I mean, you'd think I'd love it. Jean-Luc Picard is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek. But Star Trek Picard, for me, failed to capture a lot of what made Picard so compelling. It felt to me like it just did not, the show just did not understand his character and why his character mattered. That can happen sometimes. But when I say that there's nothing to get, what I mean is that this pure, idealized version of a franchise, of a property, only exists in your head. Every work of fiction, and this is coming from a man with 30 books in print. You read that, you heard that right, 30. Every work of fiction is a work of, I can't seem to say this. I couldn't say it in the first take either. Every work of fiction is a work in progress. And every writer will inevitably deviate in minor ways from things they have previously written. So the things that I write in the 14th book of the Justice Keeper saga are going to be a little different thematically and contextually from the things I wrote in the first, because I, as a person, have grown. Writing is an expression of a person. Like, it's an expression of your inner world, and that world is always changing. So, like another big one, I love the Rings of Power. Okay, I love it. I love it so much more than I liked Game of Thrones. In fact, I'll be straight with you. I didn't much care for Game of Thrones. I didn't care for The Mandalorian either, but we're not here to talk about the things that I don't like. That's not relevant. I love the Rings of Power, but again, you get the same critiques over and over and over. These people don't understand Tolkien, blah, 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 blah. All they wanted to do is insert forced diversity. We had to have the strong woman character, and we had to have black elves, and blah, 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 blah. And that's all they do, is they rant and they rant and they rant. And they say, these people don't understand Tolkien. And here's the thing. If we could resurrect J.R. Tolkien, bring him back to life, with all of his memories intact. And if we said to him, write for us a novel detailing how the Rings of Power were forged, and if he was willing to do it, I guarantee you there would be something in that novel that would make the whiny douchebags online go, This deviates from canon. Because a writer's relationship to their own work is always evolving. And when you start treating works of fiction like they are sacred texts, that's when you failed. Because you've completely failed to understand what a work of fiction is for. And all of these losers who complain endlessly about the forced diversity, all of these complaints about how they don't get, these people don't get, Rafe Judkins doesn't get the Wheel of Time, and Amazon doesn't get J.R.R. Tolkien. And you know me, I'm not a big fan of big corporations, but Amazon doesn't get J.R.R. Tolkien, and Disney doesn't get Star Wars. I am not here to defend those corporations, but what I am saying is that all of those critiques are not genuine critiques at face value. What they are is justifications by weak-willed, incredibly fragile white men who cannot bear to see anything that challenges their worldview, even in the most trivial way. And so they whine and they complain and they ruin the experience for the rest of us. And, going back to what I said last week, I care about what you do to the extent that it affects me. Well, I'm starting to care a lot about what these losers do, because it does affect me. And more importantly, it affects the actors of color who are cast in these projects, many of whom receive endless harassment and death threats. But also, it affects the fans. It affects the people who enjoy these projects and who don't get to see them brought to a satisfying conclusion because the executives panic when a bunch of crybabies post a bunch of bullshit, made up, trumped up bad reviews. It's garbage. And I really, really want it to stop. It's like conservatives, they hate joy. They really do. Not to bring up the stupid campaign again, but like when Harris was talking about joy, that's so important because these people hate joy. They are miserable and they want you to be miserable too. Okay. Thank you. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. I know this was a bit of a longer one. You guys have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.